to order. First things first, I would like to welcome all of you here to our board meeting and have the Pledge of Allegiance led to us. Mr. P., you're here, correct? Guess not. All right. I'll go with Ms. Swinburne. You get to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please place your right hand over your heart and begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have nothing to report out of closed session.
We do have a report.
I'm sorry. We have an expulsion case to report out of closed session.
No.
Oh, I'm
Dr. Stokes.
Forgive me. The Board of Education at its meeting on February 20th, 2018 in closed session voted to release certificated employee case number 01-17/18 and authorize the superintendent or his designee to provide notice on or before March 15th, 2018 that the employee shall be released from the second-year probation position at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 school year. All in favor?
Aye.
You already voted in closed session, so you're just reporting out the action on 5.
Really, I've done this before. Not a problem. I'd like to report out that we had unanimous roll call. Do I read each individual paragraph? That's what's been throwing me. Sorry. Board of Education at its meeting on February 20th, 2018 in closed session voted to release certificated employee case number 02-17/18 and authorize the superintendent or his designee to provide notice on or before March 15th, 2018 that the employees shall be released from the second-year probation position at conclusion of the 2017-2018 school year. The Board of Education at its meeting on February 20th, 2018 in closed session voted to release certificated employee case number 03-17/18 and authorize the superintendent or his designee to provide notice on or before March 15th, 2018 that the employee shall be released from the second-year probation position at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 school year. The Board of Education at its meeting on February 20th, 2018 in closed session voted to release certificated employee case number 04-17/18 and authorize the superintendent or his designee to provide notice on or before March 15th, 2018, and that the employee shall be released from the second-year probationary position at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 school year. The Board of Education at its meeting on February 20th, 2018 in closed session voted to release certificated employee case number 05-17/18 and authorize the superintendent or his designee to provide notice on or before March 15th, 2018 that the employee shall be released from the second-year probationary period at the conclusion of the 2017-2018 school year. And we had a unanimous vote on all of these in closed session. All right. That was a report out of closed session. Now we're looking to go to the budget review presentation by Mr. Ron Bennett.
No, you've got 2 introductions.
Oh, good God. Thank you. Yes, I know that. Don't have him here, but thank you. First off, I'd like to introduce Mark Milton, the Director of Nutrition Services. Hi, Mark. We read out Mark's whole bio last time, so I'm just going to say that he's come from over Lawndale. Apparently you've got a shorter commute now, so congratulations on that. That's always more pleasant. And welcome aboard. It's nice to have you born part of our team. Kathleen Cole, the Assistant Director of Nutritional Services. Kathleen was hired May 2011 as a chiropractic assistant nutritional counselor at Back to Life Chiropractic in Santa Ana, California, and later served as a registered dietitian at the Center of Discovery in Los Alamitos, California. In October of 2015, she was hired at the Presbyterian Intercommunity Hospital Health in Whittier, California, where she served as a clinical dietitian 2 and a diabetes educator and nutritional counselor. Kathleen received her Bachelor of Science in Nutrition and Dietetics in 2013 from California State University, Long Beach. I'd like to welcome you to join our team here in the district, Kathleen.
Yes.
Hope the two of you stick around for a long time. Nice to have you on board. Now, I'm moving to Mr. Ron Bennett, the CEO of School Services of California.
Thank you, Mr. Wormers, members of the board. Ron Bennett, CEO of School Services California, as well as Matt Phillips, Director of Management Consulting Services from School Services, are here tonight. School Services did a review of the district budget at the first interim, and so they're here to report on some of their findings as well as answer some questions and present to you a little bit of information now that we've had the governor's budget proposal that calls for full funding of the LCFF. And so at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bennett. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Stowe. And President Wormers, members of the distinguished board, Dr. Mannon, members of the public and the staff, we are pleased to be here tonight. I'm Ron Bennett from School Services. Matt Phillips is with me tonight. He's our Director of Management Consulting Services, and I'm going to ask him to walk through some of the technical parts of the budget review for you. We'd like to take questions as we go, if that's acceptable to the board. And our goal tonight is to give you an overview of what we found when we did the budget review. And this is a conservative district. I know that from time to time you like to have an independent review of what goes on in your budget. We've been working with you for many, many years. We always enjoy it. And so, Matt, do you want to walk through that budget review for us?
Absolutely.
Okay, please.
All right, and the keyboard here is going to allow me to go back and forth, correct? Yes. Okay, perfect. Good evening, board members. Again, my name is Matt Phillips with School Services of California. As Mr. Bennett mentioned, the review of the budget, it's very much an objective review. It's taking a look at a lot of the assumptions that go into the budget. I liken a budget review similar to a tune-up for a car. You take your car in not because there's something wrong with it, but because you want to have an independent third party take a look at it, give you some confirmation that you're taking care of your car, you're doing everything that you need to for the car, and that's really what a budget review is. So we'll go ahead and kick it off here. So as Mr. Bennett mentioned, we took a look at the budget as of the first interim period. Just a quick overview of the budget cycle. Every year there's 4 periods at which staff brings forth the budget for the board's consideration and approval. It would be the approved budget in June, and that comes along with the local control and accountability plan. The first interim budget comes forward in December each year, which is a continuation of the adopted budget. The second interim budget review comes forward in March. And finally, the estimated actuals in May. So there's the 4 distinct budget periods during the year. We did take a look at first interim. We're getting very close to second interim now, but due to the timing and due to the fact that the second interim wasn't prepared at the time that the budget review was done, we did go ahead and take a look at the information that was approved by the board as of first interim. The budget includes a lot of assumptions, and what we try to do with the budget review is take a look at those major assumptions that are in the budget. The benefit of school finance in the state of California is that whether you're up in Del Norte County or down in Torrance down here, the account code structure across the state of California is the same. It's the standardized account code structure, otherwise known as SACS. Also, a lot of the information that we get at the local level comes from the state. And so the information that we take at the local level and we digest at the local level is similar across all 1,000 districts across the state of California. And that's beneficial for us at School Services because we do a lot of budget reviews. And so whether we're up north in the Central Valley or in beautiful sunny, typically warm Southern California, the budget information and the assumptions that go into it, we can certainly develop expectations on what we would expect to see in the budget. So I'm going to walk through some of those assumptions tonight, make sure to get us out of here before it's light. But some of those major factors that I took a look at in the budget is the local control funding formula. I took a look at some of the enrollment and attendance factors. The state's been allocating some one-time money, so I took a look at the one-time allocations that were included in the budget. And then on the expense side, took a look at the people costs, the salaries and benefits, and then also some of the materials and the supplies associated with that. And part of the budget review, Dr. Stowe can, I'm sure, attest to it, but there's a lot of poking and prodding that goes along with the budget review. I like to say that I torture the numbers just to make sure, to really test some of those assumptions, to push the limits on some of those assumptions. And there is a lot of data that is requested back and forth, a lot of follow-up questions that come from that. And I do want to thank Dr. Stowe and his staff, especially Judy, for getting that information to me in such a timely fashion. So before we get into some of the assumptions, I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we really understand what a budget is. And a budget is just a projection based on a set of assumptions anchored in current conditions. So what does that mean? That means that a budget is ever-changing. Okay? A budget is not looking into a crystal ball or an 8-ball and saying, here's what is going to happen in 2 years, or here's what's going to happen in 6 months. It's a set of assumptions based on what we know right now. And I had mentioned the 4 budget periods through the year, and those are important budget periods because as the year progresses, we learn more information about ourselves locally, so what our enrollment is going to be, what our final staffing looks like during the year. If we do hire people in the middle of the year, that's going to ebb and flow on the personnel costs. So local assumptions, there's also statewide assumptions, because a lot of assumptions that we build into our budget are assumptions that come from the state. And as the state's assumptions change, because a lot of their information, they don't necessarily have control over, but nonetheless they need to make assumptions. As those assumptions change, it's incumbent upon us at the district to take that information, incorporate it into our budget, and bring forth the results of those assumptions to the board. And so there's an expectation that a budget will change from period to period. The reason why we do a budget is largely because of Assembly Bill 1200, or AB 1200. Incorporated in that Assembly bill is the requirement to do a budget projection for the current year and the 2 subsequent years. So at any given time when the board is looking at a budget, we're looking at 3 years. So I put this slide on here, and what this represents is this is the first interim multi-year projection that the board did approve at first interim. It's a little bit different format. The way the board is used to seeing it is in the SACS form, the Standardized Account Code Structure form. And I like to put this all on one slide because the SACS form is a 6-page document, so we always have to flip through and kind of figure out heads from tails. But the 2 points I want to make on this slide is this slide is just the accumulation of assumptions and the underlying detail that go into it. And we're going to unpackage some of that detail here in a couple more slides. But whenever you think about the fiscal health of a district and the fiscal solvency, it's always important that we look at the unrestricted side of the budget. Okay, so just to take a quick look at the 17-18 columns there, and if you look at the very left unrestricted column, the yellow number, the minus 4.5 million, what that says is that based on our assumptions as a first interim, that we are planning to spend more in unrestricted resources than we're receiving, okay, by 4.5 million. Now, that could change. I can guarantee you that just about every single number will change by the time second interim comes back because the assumptions will have changed at that point. We'll have 3 more months of actuals under our belt. We'll have new assumptions from the state based on the governor's budget proposal that was released in January. And so there are some moving pieces that go along with that, but it is important to recognize that this is an accumulation of those assumptions at that given period.
So before you move off of that slide, one thing that Matt said that I think is really important is that since the first interim, which you submitted in December, the governor came out with his budget in January. And what you're going to see at the second interim is that the governor changed his funding level for schools, the expectation. He put more money in the first year, 2018-19, but less money in each of the next 2 years. And so the goal is the same. You're not going to get more money, you're just getting a little bit earlier. So when you see the first interim, it'll look better than this projection in the first year, but then it'll look worse than the next 2. So I just want to set up that continuity that Matt was talking about because we don't want you to see the second interim, which you will see next month, and say, well, how come that doesn't look like this? Because once the governor came out with his new projections, and then in May he'll do it again. So in May, Dr. Stowe will give you a new projection of what how the governor's budget will affect your district.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate that. And when we conclude, we also have some good news to share, largely based on work that Superintendent Mannon has done with his local assembly member here that I think will be pleasing to everybody's ears in the room. So let's take a look real quick at the local control funding formula. So what we're doing now is we're unpackaging some of the underlying assumptions that went into the previous slide. When we think about the local control funding formula, this is truly our lifeblood in schools. This is the money that comes to us from the state. The money is unrestricted, so for all intents and purposes, this money is available for the board to determine how to best direct the district. Now, recognizing that a lot of our expenditures are in the people, we're in the people business, that does limit some of the flexibility, but nonetheless, these dollars come to us with really no strings attached from the state. When we think about the local control funding formula, there's two primary assumptions that we always want to consider and we always want to make sure that we're on top of when we're bringing forth and compiling our budget. And the first component of that is what's known as the gap closure percentage. Now, the best way that I can articulate what this percentage is it's the amount of money that the state allocates in any given year to get every district and charter school in the state of California closer to their particular LCFF target. And it's a mechanical calculation that says, here's what you received last year, here's what you're projected to receive next year, and the state's going to give you a percentage of that difference. Okay, so what the state and the Department of Finance does each interim cycle is they provide a percentage that every district across the state of California is strongly recommended to use. And this percentage is the work of the folks at the Department of Finance. They have a lot of very smart people there. But recognizing that the folks at the Department of Finance are creating these percentages based off their own assumptions, looking at state revenues, whether it be personal income tax revenues, sales and use tax, or corporate tax revenues coming in. And so those revenues are also subject to ebbs and flows and changes. So you can see how the layering of assumptions on assumptions, you would certainly expect some changes to happen from the different periods because of those layers. The percentages that the district was using as a first interim were the most recently available percentages provided by the Department of Finance. These are the percentages that I would expect to see really in any district up and down the state of California. So that's one prong of the local control funding formula. The other prong of the formula is our average daily attendance. And I want to start by talking about the enrollment for the district and make sure that we're on the same page with the differences between those two terms. Bless you. The enrollment for the district is represented by a student showing up and registering in our student information system. That means we have one student enrolled. For us to be funded, the state said, well, we don't want to pay you on just a student appearing in your student information system. We want to pay you based on the students showing up every day. I think that that's a pretty good policy because we certainly want to give every incentive for students to show up every day so that they can learn in the classroom. So I want to talk real quick about the enrollment for the district. Unfortunately, we've been in a state of decline over the last several years. Between the 2012-13 and the 16-17 fiscal year, we have lost about 157 students per year. Okay, so those are the number of students from our student information system. And the reason why that's important is because part of that AB 1200 requirement with preparing a budget for the current and 2 subsequent years, we have to make assumptions about what our own enrollment and the related attendance is going to do. And it's part art, part science when you think about enrollment projections and ADA projections. But recognizing that we've lost, on average, 157 students per year over the last 4 years, if I take a look at the district's assumption for changes in attendance, and the attendance is generated from that enrollment, they're actually projecting a softer ADA decline. And I think that that's an important note to recognize, because when you think about assumptions, there's always risks associated with every assumption, whether or not that assumption comes true. And if we think about taking an aggressive versus a conservative assumption, if our historical trends said that we lost 157 students over the previous 4 years, then the natural correlation would be, well, we're going to lose 157 students per year in the upcoming years. I would say that there's probably a relatively low risk with that assumption because we have a trend and we have some data to support that assumption. As we start to deviate from that trend data, we certainly want to incorporate information that we know at the current time. Do we have new development popping up? Right? Do we have students that are moving in? Are we implementing a new magnet program where we think maybe we're going to pull in some students from surrounding districts? That would cause us to change our assumption and deviate from that past historical trend. I would say that the district's projection of less than that 157, it's not a real aggressive, but it's definitely more aggressive. because the risk associated with that is if those students don't show up, that's on the district, right? Because we projected about 100 decrease. Well, if we do lose the 157 year over year, that's additional revenue that we would not be eligible to receive. Okay? So there was the governor has been really, he doesn't like to use the word legacy, but in the governor's legacy, he's been very prone to the one-time funds for school districts and charter schools across the state of California. This is the 17-18 year is actually the 4th year in a row that we've received some one-time funding. For the 17-18 year, the governor proposed $147 per ADA, and the district did include that in its budget and properly excluded in the 2 subsequent years. But what this one-time funding is because our governor has been very conservative over his last 3 or 4 years. Although he's a Democrat, he's very fiscally conservative. The governor has underestimated the revenues that he thinks the state is going to collect each year. And under Proposition 98, schools are guaranteed a minimum amount of funding. And so when the actual cash comes in higher than his projections, we get trued up the difference between those two. And so the one-time funds that we've been receiving is really just a true-up of prior years. And I mention that because in our travels across the state of California, we hear, well, we've gotten one-time funds 4 years in a row. At what point does that become ongoing? Right? And it's a fair question. But I think it's important to understand the origin of those funds and recognizing that they're really a product of the governor and his conservative nature. Recognizing that our governor is coming up on the end of his term here, we could very well see an end to the one-time funds as well. So I want to talk real quick about contributions. Yes, sir.
Mr. Lee, I think, has a question.
You said you wanted to take questions as we went through this.
Absolutely.
So maybe I have
Absolutely.
one. The challenge is we're getting one-time money every year. So that means it almost inherently becomes continuing money, but it really isn't because it can, in our budget projections in the 2 out years, it's not there.
That's correct.
How are other districts dealing with that? Are they anybody using that for salaries or raises, or are they just using it for one-time money like paving parking lots and phone systems and stuff like that?
Mr. Bennett is chomping at the bit to provide a response to this one, so I'm going to let him.
So for decades, we've been advising school districts, we never use one-time money for anything that eats, because we will not be able to feed it the next year, right? So most districts are using the one-time money for materials, for supplies, for staff development, during the period where we didn't have a state bond, local facility improvements, emergency repairs, things like that. But as Matt said, when you have this series of one-time money, it's all because the governor under budgets revenues. He wants to see the money twice before he makes it ongoing. And so if I just skip ahead a little bit, for 2018-19, he's proposed one-time money again. So it'll be 5 years in a row that we'll get one-time money. And it's to make up for those revenues that have been under budgeted in past years. Now, there are 2 reasons for the one-time money to slow down or to stop. One is that the governor is giving us that one-time money and charging it against a mandate bill that he owes school districts.
98.
And yes, and that mandate bill is almost paid off. So that's one thing. Second thing is that if the economy slows down a little bit, one of these years, the governor's estimate of lower revenues will turn out to be right. And if that happens, then there won't be an entitlement to the one-time money. But most districts are using the one-time money outside of their ongoing expenses. They're using it for those one-time expenses that enhance the program, but don't carry a future cost with them.
Yeah, it's the way I budget my business too. We get bonuses and they become reoccurring, but they always scare you because you don't want to make payroll with bonuses, at least in my business. So, okay, just wanted to confirm that.
But there are districts that have used some of the one-time money for an off-schedule, one-time payment to employees. But generally, the money has been used for one-time purposes across the board.
So they've not used it, they've used it for maybe a bonus, but not a continuing salary.
Right. I'm not aware of a single district that has used the one-time money for continuing salaries. When you put it into that 3-year projection, if you do that, the second and third year turns south real fast.
Okay. Thank you.
And then one other layer onto that, if, I mentioned the AB 1200 requirement, and within that requirement, there's county office review and approval of budgets. And I would venture to say that if a district included one-time funds in future years and got out ahead of the governor before he actually projected any one-time funds, I think a county office would have difficulty concurring in the approval of the budget without seeing those one-time funds from the governor first.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So any other questions at this point? Okay, perfect. So let's talk real quick about contributions. A contribution is support from unrestricted funds for a restricted program. And so said another way, we have some programs in our budget that require additional support because they're severely underfunded. Special education being kind of the marquee program that we think about when we think about contributions. This is because the feds are only giving us 40 cents on the dollar for what they owe us. The state contributes their share, and any increased cost really falls to us at the local level. And so statewide, we've been seeing increased contributions within school district budgets, primarily for special education due to increasing costs in special education, and also the routine restricted maintenance account, which is our facility maintenance program that we're required to maintain. This is starting to pop up again now with Proposition 51, the $9 billion in bonds that were on the November ballot. The routine restricted maintenance, which we had some flexibility over during the recession, is now ramping back up to a level which is 3% of our total general fund expenditures. And so the accumulation of those two are really the primary drivers behind the contributions, and the district's contributions have been increasing steadily over the last 2 years and are continuing to increase over the subsequent 2 years, due in large part to the increasing CalPERS and CalSTRS costs, but also for step and column costs as well. Okay. So let's jump over to the expenditure side of the budget. I mentioned earlier that we really are in the people business. It's people that make things happen for us at the schools, at the sites, and the departments to make sure that our kids have good education. Statewide, generally we see that about 83 to 87% of a district's budget is in people, and that's a statewide thing. When I looked at the budget here for Torrance, looking at last year's close, 16-17, so numbers that have been audited, 86% of your unrestricted expenses were in people. So you guys are right in that sweet spot of the 83 to 87. When I took a look at the 17-18 budget at first interim, you guys were up to 88% in people on the unrestricted side. The two primary factors behind that are really the increasing costs for CalSTRS and CalPERS. That came through from the governor, known as the PEPRA, the Pension Reform Act. And that's a cost increase that districts are dealing with statewide. And unfortunately, that cost increase happens before we have the ability to do anything with our new money. That's a statutory increase that we're required to pay. It's a percentage of our payroll. There was also some additional personnel costs for step and column. Again, those step and column increases, well, specifically the step increases, are included in our collective bargaining agreement. They're on our salary schedule. It rewards employees for longevity, but nonetheless, it is an additional cost that we're required to pay before we have the opportunity to allocate any additional resources as the board sees fit. Okay, the remaining component of the budget is non-people things. So if 88% of our budget is in the people, we're talking now about the final 12% of our budget. There is some discretionary components in here, but if you think about this other 12% of the budget, this is our utilities. This is textbooks. This is if we have students who are attending non-public agencies or non-public schools. This is any renovations that we might be paying for out of the general fund. Again, it's the remaining 12%, but you'll notice that if our people costs went from 86 to 86%, or 86 to 88%, excuse me, there's a subsequent decrease in the other side of the budget, and so that has gone from 15% of our budget down to 14% of our budget down to 12% of our budget in the 17-18 year. So just final thought. Oh, yes, sir.
You mentioned a sweet spot on salaries. Are we on the same sweet spot on this as well?
Yeah, so this is kind of what's left over.
Right.
If we're in the sweet spot on salaries, then we would be in the sweet spot on the other side as well.
I mean, it makes sense. There's no deviation. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, that's a fair statement.
It makes me I'm painfully aware of the fact that we're spending $500 million remodeling all of our schools, and it bothers me to see that we're not spending money to maintain them. I've got 3 teenagers at home. If you don't continue to maintain things, they don't last very long. So
That, as a former teenager, I can attest to that. That's true.
a long time ago for me, so I don't remember that. But
And Matt's going to get another chance because he announced just a couple of days ago that he and his new bride are going to be expecting their first child in August. So you may want him to move to your district because you could use some ADA.
Well, you know, at school services, I like to say I don't take my work home with me, but recognizing that there's a statewide declining enrollment problem, I thought that I would try and help out with that. So just some final thoughts here before we talk about some things that the board can expect to see coming forward. It's so important for me to remind everybody of what a budget truly is, that it's a projection based on a current set of assumptions anchored in current conditions. There's a reason why the state requires us to bring 4 budgets annually for the board's consideration, and that's because there's very key marks and key deadlines that happen throughout the year, and it wouldn't be fiscally prudent for us to only bring 1 budget because of all those changes that happen during the year. So, you know, when staff does bring forth a subsequent budget, there will be changes. I would say that if there's no changes, then staff is not doing their job, because there's always things that are changing throughout the year, whether it be assumptions that come from the state or assumptions that we have identified locally, right? So our enrollment in ADA and staffing and so forth. You know, in summary of the budget review, there was nothing that I identified in the assumptions that would deviate significantly from any other district that looks like you guys across the state of California. You know, if I was sitting in that position, the assumptions that are being used there are the same assumptions that I would be using. They're fair assumptions, whether it be based in historical trends or based on information that we're receiving from the state at that given time. All right? Yes, sir.
Mr. Stefan has a question.
Well, back to that slide about ADA and our finding enrollment. How quickly can we, let me ask this, we build the budget on those, we can't, or phrase it, we can't really quickly change our mind when we realize we just have to start cutting places, right? So if we find out next year we're losing not 100, but 157, that just has, we have to cut during that year.
Well, you get funded based on, again, I mean, it's, Matt mentioned it, it's average daily attendance. And so even though we might, you know, decline slightly in enrollment, and we're saying that in 1920 we're gonna level out at the loss because we don't have enough information quite yet, although we have 10-year projections that Decision Insight has done for us. And so we use some of that information to make these decisions. But you're funded at if you go down a lot this year, you still get funded at the prior year. And one of the things that we continue to drive home the message with the administrators at the sites is how important kids showing up to school is, and with parents, you know, and so that's why we really emphasize that is bring your child to school. If you're going to be out of town for a weekend, you're planning to leave Thursday night, leave Friday morning, you know, bring them to school for an hour and then take them out, because it's that daily attendance that really gets us to that high level. And they do studies throughout the state, but we're at about 96-97% attendance rate, which is phenomenal. And so, you know, we really, I think everybody collectively, you know, from the classroom, teachers to you know, the parents and the admin at the site, doing a great job of making sure that kids are coming to school, they're learning, there's meaningful instruction happening all the time. However, you know, we need to continue to emphasize that and make sure that we can maintain the high level of attendance.
And as Dr. Stowe mentioned, I want to echo the point about, you know, the state gives us a little bit of reprieve where if we have an unexpected decrease in a given year, we get to use the prior year number. That gives us a year to pivot because of rules around labor. We're unable to make changes in the middle of the year. especially on the certificated side. So the state gives us the 1-year reprieve that allows us to use that prior year number to give us that time to pivot. One of the data points that I shared when I used to work in schools, and I think this is a good messaging point, several years ago, but every day that a student is absent, that's about $52 for the district in lost revenue. Okay, and it's going to be higher now that we're almost all the way through the LCFF. But just having that messaging point, I think was important for both the principals and the parents to know that, missing school on that Thursday or not showing up on the Friday, not only is the child not there to learn, but that also affects the district financially.
I'm just going to ask one more, if that's okay. The LCFF fund, full funding of LCFF gets us back, what, to the 06?
0708.
0708. I just kind of want the audience to hear that it's getting us back to where we were a decade ago. So it's not full funding in the.
It's not full funding even to where we were a decade ago, because after the governor decided how much it took to restore our purchasing power, he handed us a bill for the increases in STRS and PERS, and those costs eat up about 1/4 of the money that would have otherwise come to you for programs and salaries and additional personnel and those kinds of things for your district. So I wanted to go in a different direction with this presentation, and you've kind of teed up a softball for me, because that's where I want to go next.
Mr. Bennett, I've got 2 additional questions.
Okay.
Let's get those first.
Let's take those questions first.
I mean, this is just a really quick question. This trend of the low enrollment, are you finding this trend statewide, or is it just our district?
Statewide, the state is losing a little more than 1% a year in enrollment, and so for you, you're a little bit less than that, less than 1%, but statewide, more than 50% of districts are declining, and all of the large ones, and in the high-cost areas. And so we would expect to see what we're seeing, but you have to plan for it. Remember that if you lose 50 students, you will lose $500,000. 50 students is normally covered by perhaps 2 teachers at 25-1, right? If we did a staffing ratio of 25-1. So even if you make proportional staffing cuts, you'll save maybe $200,000, but you'll lose $500,000. So districts in declining enrollment are always making bigger cuts than they can make by just making proportional staff cuts. So it's a significant thing for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, back to the LCFF and how it related. So, because I always remember I got elected in November of '07. We had actually, we were in negotiations. We actually had made an offer to our employees. And I remember Dr. Mannon called me on January 11th of 2008 and said, oh, by the way, the governor just gave us a budget or projections, and they're way down from what we had. And I know the board said, well, we made the offer, we got to honor it, we'll figure out how we're going to do the rest of the stuff. But I remember since that time, when I was elected, for the next 4 or 5 years, we were doing nothing but cutting budgets and running backwards. So that when the governor said 07, 08 was going to be the base year, I kind of remember it well. But then what he applied was a normal inflation factor to get to this point. I guess he's doing this a year early, he says. To
2
get
years.
to
2 years early.
2 years early. To get to where we were then, you're right, less the PERS cost, which he sprung midway through the process. But where do we've been trying to reach for this holy grail of being 100% LCFF, and now what happens? Do we just stare at Prop 98 and go, okay, well then we're going to be continuously in the mud, or where's this going going forward. We have to look forward to, I guess is a better way to put it.
So there are a lot of commonality in those questions. Are there other questions that we should take before we jump into that?
Nope, if this is your softball, go right ahead.
Okay, perfect. And so first let me say that for the local control funding formula, I just want everyone to understand that during those bad years, 2007 through 2012, you lost about 22% of the purchasing power that you had in your school district. 22%. All districts lost at about the same rate, but when the money came back, the state had this major reform, the first in 40 years, and not all districts got the same amount of money back. And based on demographics, your district did not get back as much as you lost. Okay, so let me say that right up front. Let me give another assertion that I can defend, and that is the base grant for all districts is too low to operate a school district. So some of the districts who are receiving additional money for programs for students are tempted to use some of that money to cover the shortages in the base. You don't have that money to cover the shortages in the base. So I want to pick on Dr. Mannon for just a moment, because when he and I first met, he was the young superintendent over in Glendora. And we were fighting a battle under the old system for equalization. Glendora, Torrance, Arnold Plank was the superintendent here at the time, were $500 to $700 lower in funding than other districts, even under the old system, under the revenue limits. And it took us about 4 years, and I think you'll remember that, to get us back up to where 98% of the kids were within $100 of each other in the state of California. And you did that, and you were one of the leaders in that. And so now you get to do it again, because we now have the School Finance Consortium, the coalition, and Dr. Mannon has been a leader in that since the day it started. And the goal is to try to get the base up to a point where you could actually operate a school district. Even at full implementation, after the governor says, well, I've hit this holy grail, which isn't such a big grail, we are still, oh, that's right, that's right too. We are still well below the national average. Our lowest funded districts will be last in the nation. Our highest funded districts will be about 35th in the nation, with the average at 45. That's not good enough for California. That's not what built this area. When I'm in Torrance, what I think about is I think about Zamperini Field. I think about the aerospace industry. I think about the educated workforce that brought people to this city and built this city because we had that educated workforce. They paid taxes. The companies paid taxes. So we had the best educational system in the world. And during the last 30 years, and I'll attribute it right to Prop 13, our education system has been in a spiral the wrong direction. And to turn that spiral is going to take a lot of effort. So the School Finance Coalition now has an opportunity to reach for something better than 45th in the nation. And we've had some announcements in just the past couple of weeks. We have Mr. Murasuchi's bill, which would say, now that you've reached full implementation, let's set the bar higher. Let's set the bar higher and see if California can move ahead. We have the Senate coming out today saying that they want the governor to increase the amount that comes to schools. And we're going to be lobbying for is that the base goes up. The base benefits every single district. And the base should be enough to operate your school district if you didn't get the additional money for those other programs. And it isn't. And it isn't enough for any district. So we have that to look forward to. And the budget, as I said earlier, it accelerates how quickly we get the full implementation, but it doesn't move up the ultimate bar for implementation. So from next year forward, every district will simply get the cost of living adjustment. So if the cost of living adjustment, and most of them are running in 2 point something, if that's all you get, and your salaries for step and column, your health and welfare, your STRS and PERS costs, your special education costs, your declining enrollment, all of that comes in at 5 to 6% a year, and your revenues only go up 2.5%, that leaves the board back in the position of making cuts. That isn't what California's education system is about. If we're going to recover as a state, if we're going to have, we have half our residents don't pay any income taxes. You think they wake up in the morning and say, I have a great situation, I don't pay any income taxes? I think they wake up in the morning and say, I wish I could get a job that paid me enough that I could pay some income taxes. And those people feel disenfranchised. So the governor has made a thrust at that. He's tried to get us started. The next governor, I don't know who she will be, but the next governor will be tasked with taking that to the next level and trying to get us up toward the national average. We used to be the envy of the world, and now not so much. So we've got a lot of work to do. The fact that we're funded in the bottom quartile is now matched by student performance. California's student performance is right there where we're funded, down in that bottom quartile, and that's simply not good enough. So we have some things listed on the slide that are out there, but the main thing I wanted you to know is that the January revenues have come in high. The governor has indicated that he's going to spend those. He owes them to education. The Senate has a proposal to increase education funding above the governor's January budget. The Assembly now has a proposal, Mr. Maritsuchi's bill, and I remember him as a member of this distinguished board. Both houses now are saying more money for education. And who has the plan? The only organization that has a plan is the Coalition for School Finance. And I think that Dr. Mannon and the other members who formed that had the right idea right from the start. This isn't about the districts that don't get much out of the LCFF. This is about all districts rising, and that base grant, I hope, will be the focus for this year. So you get to serve again. So, and I have to tell you that I work with some of the smartest chief business officials in the state. But the one person that I admire most as a chief business official is the person who taught me school business when I was a young Air Force officer right out of the War College, and it just happened to be Shelley's father. And so Leon Taylor was my mentor at Long Beach Unified, and he taught me school business, and I am very grateful to him, and I hope you'll tell him that. Thank you, Shelley.
Small world.
Okay.
Mr. Lee, you have a question?
I'm probably one of the few people that read the paper every day, and when you read the LA
Hey,
Times,
hey.
you get to read more about LA than Torrance most of the time, but thank God the Daily Breeze is hanging on. But as I read through it, I've read with some interest where LA Unified is dealing with some issues of using, and this is where I lose the words. Is it categorical or supplemental funds that they're using for different things, and now they're in trouble because they've got to move it around? And I'm just making sure we're not doing that, or what is that, or can you explain that to me better than the Times?
So I'm going to talk about LA Unified and then let Matt talk about you. And so, so let me just say that in a state that does not adequately fund public education, that has newly adopted the local control model, local boards are given far more authority than they have ever had to manage the programs that they think are necessary for their students. And some districts have been more aggressive than others in using that flexibility. Some haven't. With Los Angeles Unified, talk about declining enrollment. They went from 700,000 students to 550, and they're still declining. And so, as a result of that, they have been scrambling to try to maintain programs for a very high-need population. So just as I wouldn't question judgments made by this board in their local control accountability plan, I wouldn't question the ones in Los Angeles Unified. I was privileged to facilitate a blue ribbon panel that had quite a number of distinguished people on it 2 summers ago to develop a roadmap for Los Angeles Unified to maintain its fiscal solvency while at the same time increasing student performance. That was a challenge. That was a real challenge using California budget numbers. So Los Angeles is Los Angeles, and they have needs that you don't have. Like you, we were never in the paper when I was in Long Beach because we had Los Angeles sitting right there, and they were in the paper all the time. And so, but in your budget, I'd like Matt to comment about how you're using your supplemental money.
So just to follow up on the Los Angeles, we talked about contributions earlier, contributions to restricted programs. What Los Angeles did is they said, we're getting all this new money and there's really no rules around it at this point. We're flying, or we're building the plane as we fly it. And they said that this new money, the supplemental and concentration, we're going to use some of that money for special education. The way they went about it is they said 72% of our special ed students earn these dollars, so we're just going to take 72% of those dollars and move them over. And you know, like Ron said, we're not going to question why they did it, but the thought was that they weren't following what the intent of the law was with increased or improved services related to those funds. So I say that because you guys are not in that same boat as Los Angeles Unified. I don't think anyone's really in the same boat as Los Angeles Unified in some of the decisions they make and the actions that they undertake.
You can never be in the same boat they are because you don't get enough money. And so, I mean, you cannot spend large sums of money on supplementary programs because you don't get large sums of money.
So basically, if I had a surplus in supplemental money, I couldn't use that for something across the board. In other words, I get this much supplemental money, but I only need to use this much, I decide. I can't take the rest of it and spend it across the board in the district in any way.
So you could, and the key would be that the students who generate that money receive a benefit from that money. So, for example, I worked with the district last week where they are adding 2 days to the work schedule for teachers. They're devoting it to staff development for teachers. They're providing a salary increase to pay for those 2 days for teachers, and it's across the board. And so, but what are the students getting? Well, they're getting professional development for teachers that presumably yield benefits to students in the classroom. And the board gets to make that decision. How do you make that decision? In your LCAP. So when you go through that local control accountability plan, you decide whether there's enough justification to use that money across the board. We have resisted the thought that that money can be used without any additional services for students. The law is very clear that the students who generate the money must receive additional services. And so
I couldn't give everybody in the district a raise with that extra money or something like that.
So we would say that you could not do that unless there was some translation. The board would have to put in the LCAP. Remember, the LCAP is, this is what we need. This is the need we're trying to address. This is how we intend to address it. This is how we're going to measure the results. This is how we're going to report the results. And when you start to put it into that kind of a model, if there's no relationship between how you spend the money and services to the students who generate the money, it shows very clearly in that kind of a model. So you have to find that nexus. So we've had districts that have added days, they've added minutes, they've added professional development, they've added collaboration time, and then they've also increased the services by classified management so that the money can be used for all groups if they choose to do it. But that nexus to student programs is the key to spending that supplemental and concentration grant money. And as I said, districts that have a lot of it sometimes have the issue that you talked about, where they've got a glass this big and they've got a little bit left, and how could we use that creatively? And the board gets to decide that. In your district, the glass is much smaller and the amount that's in it is much lower, and it isn't likely that you're going to have enough money to get yourself into that kind of an issue.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Steffen.
I'm not too sure what you mean by the word use it creatively. Because that, but okay, back to the LA thing. I got what they did. I understand what they did. Was there a consequence to what they did?
So the local control funding formula right now specifies all kinds of conditions in law, but it doesn't specify any consequences from the state. most of the consequences that districts are concerned about is from civil rights groups and others who have a vested interest in making sure that the students who generate that money do receive those additional services. And there have been some lawsuits that have been generated and more that have been threatened. And as we start now to get longitudinal data on the performance of students, and we're nearing this 100% implementation, districts are going to be called to question as to whether or not the money was actually used to improve student
So the
performance.
state is somewhat silent at this point on it, and it's in the private law and the. Okay.
Exactly.
So you're talking, so the problem is they spent 72, did I hear 72 million?
It was like 470 million.
Oh, a lot of money.
It was a lot of
A lot of money to special ed, right?
Right.
But some of that money was for EL kids, homeless kids, foster
Yes.
kids. Those are the groups you're talking about, right?
And, you know, when we look at who's generating the money, special ed kids generate that money too. And
Right.
so Los Angeles,
So the argument, though, is that if
Uh-huh.
the money for EL and the money for homeless all
Yes.
started going over to special ed, that's where the lawsuits are coming in.
so you might make that argument, but there was money for those other groups as well. And so the board got to decide where they thought the money could be used most effectively. And it's their right to do that. And that's why I say we would never criticize another district, just like we wouldn't criticize your value judgments. The state gave you the right to make those choices, and we support that right. We're local control people. We believe that the state of California and the United States Department of Education have never provided anything of value to local school districts. It comes
So
from the
it-
local board.
So it's our right until it isn't.
That's right.
You've
That's
got
it. That's it.
Okay.
Okay,
Until you go
so
too
we've taken a lot of your time. We don't get down here that often. We want to be sure that we get questions answered when we're here. If I could impose for just a minute, Dr. Mannon, you have a key role with that, with the School Finance Coalition. Is there anything that I left out about that the board would need to hear, or the public?
I thought you did a great job, Ron, and that is exactly where we are. Ron was on board with this from the very beginning of the LCFF. We knew, and meaning the Finance Coalition, and I said it at the time, that the base grant would not be sufficient to actually run school districts on. That is why, and I think Ron's all over the state, so he can say this, that's why all the headlines are out there of school districts making large reductions, because the base side is not large enough to actually pay for all of these ads that have now occurred with CalSTRS, CalPERS, special education, and declining enrollment districts, and most of our large urban districts are in decline. So when you add all of those things together, it really is playing out as we thought it would, that the base grant is just not large enough to run school districts. And some of the winners back in the very beginning that received large amounts of supplemental and concentration funds have realized that they have a problem too. And their problem is there's not enough funds in the base grant to run the regular school district business. But I want to thank Ron. He was right there in the very beginning of this process.
Thank you. Other questions, Mr. President?
Not that I see I have one. You lightly touched on Prop 13 as being a source of a lot of our problems. There's some discussion of trying to put something on the ballot to right the ship, if you will, not necessarily eliminate it, but correct it in some way, shape, or form. Does that stand a pretty good chance of making it to the ballot?
So my mother is 93. She's lived in her house for 50 years over here in Orange and lives independently, does very well physically and mentally. And she tells me, I know you're up there in Sacramento and you're consorting with legislators and lobbyists and people like that. And your job is to make sure those weasels don't tax me out of my house. And so she still thinks about Prop 13 that way. There's an initiative that's gathering signatures now that's called the split roll. And so here's how the split roll works. So when my mother sells her home and hopefully moves in with my sister, but when she moves out, that house will be reappraised at 10, 15, 20 times more than what she pays taxes on. And houses turn over about every 7 years on average in California. But if I look at the commercial properties, the building that our offices are in, we've been in that building 23 years or so. It's been sold a couple of times, but it's never been reassessed because the building never gets sold. There's a corporation that owns all the stock in the building, and the stock in the corporation gets sold, but the corporation still owns the building, so there's no reappraisal. My best example is Disneyland. Disneyland opened in 1955. The stock changes hands every single day on the stock exchange, but Disneyland has never been reassessed. And so as a result, businesses pay over time much lower property taxes. Now, if a business person was here, he or she would say, but I pay a lot higher income taxes, and I pay a lot higher sales taxes, and I pay a lot higher
Yes, you do.
workers' comp and a lot higher employment taxes, right, as a result of that. So, but the group that's doing the initiative has basically said this is about $7 billion a year, and they would like it to be devoted to public education on top of anything that the state would otherwise give us. Now, that has not always been a good deal for us, that the state, you know, when the money goes through the state's hands and gets a little bit of a haircut, sometimes $7 billion turns into 45 cents. And so, so we haven't always had good pass-through results from the state of California, and you can see that in transportation as well. All the transportation bills that we've had, and we need another one to fix the next pothole. And so, so does it have a chance? I think business will have a voice, and if I were a business person, I'd say if every dollar that I pay in additional property tax should come off my state income tax, because the state income taxes for business were raised to compensate for that low property tax. So this will not be an easy ride. But I don't care about anything except the future of our state, and the future of our state is dictated by the future of our children. And if I could put every dollar that goes to businesses or anywhere else into elevating the status of our children, I would do it. And and I think all of you would. That's why you're on the board. So, so would we take that money? Yes, we would, and every dollar of it, and we'd try to put it in every classroom in the state.
You have to be careful when you bring up a discussion involving Prop 13. I thought a hairdresser was going to kill me with the scissors because I was talking about it. So, I'd like to thank both. I don't have any additional questions, so I'd like to thank both you and Mr. Phillips for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I hope you have a safe flight home. So,
we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
all right, moving right along. Have a report from the Torrance Education Foundation, Ms. Swinburne.
Thank you, and may I correct you, it's Swinburne.
Sorry. Thank you.
Good evening to everyone. In the context of what we just heard, I have some good news to share. We have a new grant from one of our community businesses to support our Science Labs campaign. I think everyone is aware, well, maybe everyone isn't aware, the foundation is raising funds to fulfill the needs of the new science labs that are being built with bond funding on all of our elementary school campuses, because the bond funds do not include money for the contents of the labs. So on average, every lab needs an additional $40,000 in order to buy the equipment and the supplies and the safety goggles and the microscopes and all the other things that go into equipping a science lab that can teach hands-on experimental science to students as young as 5 and as old as 10 or 11. So we have a new grant from Surf Management, who's a wonderful business in town and also happens to be my landlord, of $20,000 toward this campaign. So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And if you know Steve Fechner or Surf Management, or your office might be in one of his properties here in the city, I hope you will thank him on our behalf for investing in our children. We have opened registration for all levels of South Bend Richmond Academy summer school classes. For everyone. We're ahead of schedule this year because, as I mentioned last month, we know that families want to get their summer plans locked in for their students as soon as possible. So you can go to www.tef, as in Frank, S, as in Susan, BEA.org, and enroll. And there are some early enrollment discounts in place right now, in case that's important to families. And all the information is on the website there, and you can also reach us at our office if there are questions that you can't find answers to online. So we look forward to seeing lots of Torrance students in summer school with us at the end of June and in July. Also to do with money, there are two big projects underway right now that are leading up to culmination simultaneously on April 14th. The first is our annual car drawing. We are selling tickets at $30 each to the Toyota raffle this year, and as everyone I hope knows, some lucky person will end up winning a RAV4. And the ticket will be drawn on April 14th at our annual dinner, which I'll talk about a little bit more in just a moment. But I do want to be sure that everyone who's here and everyone who might be watching or will watch the recording of this meeting knows that when you purchase a ticket for $30, you may designate $20 of that cost to your school. It's on the form, it can be explained, there's information on our website at torranceeducationfoundation.org, because we want to be sure that families who care about their students and their schools have a way to invest that funding in their own campus. But then we also hope that part of that money will come back to the foundation to be used for district-wide priorities. So I encourage everyone who might want to win a car or support their school to consider.
When I was back strong-arming people to buy tickets, you could actually devote it, you could assign the money not just to a school, but to a particular classroom. Is that still the case?
Yes, it is up to each principal to work with their teachers and their families, but yes, that has been the case in the past, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. I just want to, I mean, that was one of the big selling points with a lot of parents, is you could actually dictate the money went to room 4. And the principal worked with the teacher and spent the money accordingly. So,
Yes, that's right.
thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you, Mr. Wormers. So I think I said that the winner will be drawn at our annual dinner, which will take place on the 14th of April. And those tickets are now on sale as well. I feel a little bit guilty talking about money all the time, but after the earlier presentation, I hope everyone understands that the foundation's here in order to husband the money of the community so that we can additionally invest in the schools and the teachers and the students here in the community, because we want to be sure that we do everything that we can to fill any gaps that might exist in what we have to offer our kids. So our website is available. Our website is open for anybody who's interested in either purchasing tickets to come to the dinner, or we are also seeking sponsorships from community businesses. So can I answer any questions?
I don't think there are any. Thank you very
All right,
much, Susan.
Thank you.
A voice from the past. Moving on to Torrance Council of PTAs, Michelle V.
Good evening. It's nice to be back. President Wormers, members of the board, Dr. Mannon, and cabinet. Our annual college fair, sponsored jointly by TUSD, Torrance Council PTAs, and the PTAs at North, South, Torrance, and West High School will take place on Saturday at Torrance High from 11 to 2. There will be over 100 colleges, universities, trade schools in attendance, as well as the armed services. There will be 18 informative workshops offered during the fair. There's no cost, and everyone, students, parents, community members, are all welcome to attend. So we're ready to go. I got the final update, and it looks like, you know, things are really looking good over there. So we're looking forward to that event. It's always a great event. At our association meeting on February 7th, we recognized the first place council winners of the National PTA Reflections Art Recognition Contest. We are especially pleased to announce that we have, I think it's 3, I think it's 3. First place winners at the 33rd District PTA level, and these entries have moved on to be judged at California State PTA. We also recognize Torrance Council Honorary Service Awards. We honor Denise Spellman, Cindy Shields, and Sumi Arnheim, who are wonderful people that are just constantly dedicated to students and helping PTAs wherever they can. We also held our annual elections, and Nanette Nolan, who I am standing in for tonight, will be continuing on as president next year. So that was a nice thing that she's willing to continue her service. We will have 6 students and 2 chaperones attending the 33rd District PTA Sacramento Safari on March 21st through the 23rd. This is a great opportunity for our students at the high schools to have conversations with people up in Sacramento, with our assembly members, and they'll have one-on-one meetings, and so it's always a wonderful event, the 33rd District PTA, which Mrs. Deutsch is the president of, to really get involved and see how things work up in Sacramento, and it's a wonderful event. And then we usually have those kids come back and report to us, so then I can, or Nanette, can report back to you guys. So I just want to let everybody know that we are still working very hard on our membership campaign. Remember, it is not too late to join PTA. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'd like to do introduction of the student representative to the board, Dr. Duval.
Good evening, everyone. Please join me in welcoming Kayla Tashima. She is currently the ASB president at North High School and in her second year at ASB. Her first year, she was the International Relations Commissioner, and she helped to plan the Kashiwa Exchange, which is a great program at North High. Outside of ASB, Kayla has also participated in the girls' basketball program since freshman year and was on the varsity team since her 10th grade year. She was also part of the first girls' basketball team at North to win a CIF championship game, so we're excited about that. When Kayla isn't at school with her basketball team or for ASB, she has found time to volunteer for student leagues like Double Dribble and the Candy League, and also on the weekends volunteers at North Stars, which is a club basketball team for girls in 4th through 8th grade. Please join me in welcoming Kayla Tashima.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board and cabinet. At North High, at the beginning of the year, we started off with our 4 welcome back class kickoffs for each graduating class. And for that, we also had our class councils selling class t-shirts to encourage our student body to show more school spirit in the beginning of the year. And we had our welcome back rallies at lunch on September 22nd. We were also really excited to hold our first ever senior sunrise, where our senior class gathered out in the stadium to welcome the new day as a symbol of the beginning of the new year together. We held a successful community fall blood drive October 4th and 5th in partnership with UCLA, where we donated 195 pints of blood and saved 585 lives. In October, we had our homecoming season that lasted for about 2 weeks, and we held candidate games, an assembly, a halftime show at the football game, and also a dance. We also hosted Tokuhara High School from Japan on October 27th, and we were one of their stops in the U.S. to tour as an American high school. Tokuhara High School was a national baseball champion. They were national high school baseball champions this past year, and it was a great time meeting new friends. We are also fortunate enough to begin our 24th year of the student exchange with Kashiwa Ichikashi Municipal High School from November 14th to 19th. We also hosted our fall festival on November 15th, where we had our diverse culture clubs gather and share what they have while fundraising activities. At the end of November, we had our canned food drive from November 27th to December 15th, where we collected 13,165 cans, and we donated all of those cans to a nonprofit organization called Amigos Sin Barreras, which is Friends Without Barriers. We also had our winter assembly honoring our winter sports and our successful canned food drive on December 20th. Our North Dance Department had their sold-out winter show at the Armstrong Theater on January 18th and 19th. During the week of finals, our Human Relations Ambassador Clubs put on a wellness week from the week January 22nd to the 26th and put sticky notes on every student's locker at our school to encourage and reduce stress during finals week. Our North High Theater Department put on their play The Laramie Project and recently put on their musical Hairspray at the Armstrong Theater. We honored our counseling team during Counselor Appreciation Week with little notes to let them know that we are grateful for them. Our football team were undefeated league champions of Pioneer League in 2017, and Jacob Gerardo and Saeed Galloway were nominated for the All-Area Second Team. And our girls soccer team was also undefeated league champions and is at their round 2 of COF playoffs today. For the spring, we are planning another spring blood drive on March 1st. We are also planning our Community Goodwill Collective Drive on Saturday, March 3rd, which will be in our 182nd parking lot to raise funds for the American Cancer Society in preparation for our Relay for Life campaign. We will also be having our senior mid-year slideshow on March 7th, and we are also having our Multicultural Week in March from the 12th to 16th, and we'll be having our assembly on Friday, March 16th, and we'll also be having a night show on Friday 16th in the May Gym at 6 p.m. And then after that, we will be having our Mind Madness Trivia Tournament from April 9th to the 16th. Thank you.
Very good. We always make a point of saying you're not just to sit there and collect points on your resume. If you see something that needs to be said, please say so. If you see something that we're mistaken on, please say so. Don't hesitate to speak up. I'm
Okay.
a big fan of getting voice. Like I said, I live with a lot of teenagers, so big fan of getting voices from our actual students. So please speak up.
Thank you.
Now we move on to 8.5, good news presentation from Victor Elementary School, Yukon Elementary School, and Magruder Middle School. So, Dr. Kim?
Thank you, President Wormers. It's my pleasure to introduce a couple of great student leaders from a couple of great schools. So first up from Victor Elementary School, can Anushka Bhavi please come on up and tell us about what's happening at Victor?
Very good.
Hello, Torrance School Board. I am Anushka Babe from Victor Elementary School. With the help of Mr. Magnus, Mrs. Pages, Mr. Genowan, and the Victor Elementary Environmental Engineering Club, or VEECS, we have done so much for the environment. Did you know that Victor has gone from 16 trash bags a day to just 3? We have accomplished this with our sorting station. Our sorting station consists of a landfill container or trash, recycling and liquids containers, as well as a box for recycling the styrofoam trays until we can find a more environmentally friendly substitute. Also, there's even a compost bin. All of our compost goes to our Victor garden. Not bad for a bunch of kids. And some teachers. And some, you get the idea. We also have grouchers or green vouchers which can earn prizes for students. Students earn these grouchers by bringing a trash-free lunch or answering a question about the environment. Now you're probably thinking, why would somebody want to go to this club? Is it just for fun? Well, I can answer that question. At our holiday party a few weeks back, we watched this movie called Smog of the Sea. It explained that, even though you can't see it, trash is polluting the ocean more than ever. This pollution is called microplastics. Now imagine you're sitting down for a relaxing day at the beach. You see some trash, mainly plastic, that seems to be everywhere. But what is more alarming is that the trash you can't see in the water is known to cause cancer in fish as well as people. Besides sorting station techs and compost engineers, the club offers positions like web engineers, photojournalists, graphic artists, and public relations. The VEECS are trying to reduce plastics from going into the ocean, along with raising general environmental awareness. Just last week, we took a walking study trip to the Henrietta Basin, which used to be a stormwater basin, but has been transformed by local agencies into a beautiful seasonal wetland pond, attracting all kinds of migrating wildlife. And that's some of what the Victor Elementary Environmental Engineering Club is doing. And please remember, don't be mean, go green!
Next up, from Yukon Elementary School, we have student leader Hala Gase. Please come on up, Hala.
I'd like to tell you all what it means to be a 2018 fifth grade Husky. First, it means you're a big buddy. You'll help a kinder with special projects and read to them. You are their special friend. Your kinder looks up to you. It means a lot to be that kind of leader. Second, it means you will be the first class to graduate doing the husky bark. That means you be kind, act responsibly, respect others, and keep safe. It's a lot, but Miss Toyama, Miss Hall, and Miss Wassel will teach you how. For example, in a skit, I played Miss Wassel. I was good at it. However, sadly, I must tell you that Miss Wassel was not a good player. She told another player they were no good. Luckily, all the other players said, "Don't worry, you'll get it next time." Because when you do the husky bark, you help your peers, you help them feel better. Third, in a 5th grade class, you think deep. You always tell why you support your opinion respectfully. It works outside too. For example, one of my friends was not seeing eye to eye with Miss Wassel. He politely said, "I see your point, Miss Wassel, but the ball belongs in our classroom." Miss Wassel said, "What a mature way to disagree." She still took the ball. Well, you can't always win. Fourth, but you can always write a white slip. This is a way to let Miss Wassel know that something is really bothering you, or you're looking for a mature way to solve your problem. That sometimes needs extra help. In short, at UConn, when you're a 2018 5th grade Husky, you will be a leader, help your peers, stand your ground, and be a problem solver. It's a good place to be, but I'll be moving on. Here I come, Magruder.
And representing our Magruder Mustangs, I'd like to call up 8th grade students Bobby Yamamoto and Joshua Roberts.
What makes Magruder Middle School special? If we're being completely honest, our school is extremely normal. We have bathrooms, teachers, and classrooms.
Our school really isn't different from any of the other schools in the district.
It's the teachers that make it special. Teachers like Mr. Bartlett, who stay hours after school to create the programs like the robotics program that further develop students' abilities outside of their usual classes. Almost every single day during lunch, he leaves his door open so that we could talk to him about whatever. He teaches us good morals and how to be better people.
Teachers like Miss Yeager, who set up the drama club program for people to discover their passions in theater. And every Thursday in her classroom, we would always have a ritual where we would ask questions and answer with our comments and concerns. Even the name was serious. Quack.
Being a teacher is a selfless job. I know that some teachers stay in their classroom during lunch to help us out. It's a tough job. Not all heroes wear capes.
Heroes like Miss Borowski, who set up the sorting station, and she'd even throw in a jumble every Friday that only a couple kids were ever good at.
This way of engaging students through projects like Student Council and Junior HRA help us grow and learn as students.
In the end, to find out what makes Magruder special, don't look at the volleyball courts or the buckets of crayons. Look towards the garden guru, the math counts, the cardio club, and all the teachers that make it unique.
And that's why we deserve more funding than Kashmir. Thank you, everybody.
The good news part of this is always pleasant, but it's never been this much fun. Moving to 8.6, the Correspondence Courts Committee presentation. Dr. Dugal.
Thank you.
Yeah, before we get started, does anybody need to go home, do their homework? This is an excellent time.
It's been a long night, sorry.
Thank you all for coming. Oh, she was. I wish I could give speeches like that. No more than 3 or 4 hours. Make yourself comfortable. Okay, I think we're ready.
Perfect.
Thank you for the patience.
Thank you, Mr. Wormers. First off, want to start off with the Correspondence Course Committee findings. At the end of last school year, at the direction of the board, we did convene a committee to take a look at specifically our board policy in terms of credits towards graduation. This committee has been meeting since August, and before I begin, I'd like to actually have the committee members that are here please take a stand. There was over 20 of us, so I don't want to call out every single person, but we have representatives from every single high school, teachers, counselors, and administrators from every high school, and so we're very proud to put all of our heads together to have a recommendation for you this evening. First off, the current policy as it states, this is going to be looking at our board policy in regards to credit students take outside of Torrance Unified towards graduation. Currently, our policy states, and it's with CSBA recommendation, that there are no more than 40 semester periods of instruction that are outside of TUSD. Based on evidence that we've gathered this last school year, we'd like to make a recommendation to an edit or a revision to the policy. So I'd like to call up Mr. Drew Hedinger, Christine Cruz, Tiffany Garcia, as well as Chris Icano from South High to do the presentation.
Members of the board, actually, I want to briefly start with first principles, and if Dr. DeGold, you could go back to that very first slide. When I look at that logo and I look at that name, they may not be the prettiest, but they mean something. And that's that Torrance Unified offers an exceptional education to students. Speaking as a social studies teacher specifically, I want to emphasize that that includes an exceptional social studies education. Students in my class learn and then understand and ultimately can think clearly about our nation, about our world, and that's what it comes down to in every classroom, pushing students to think. However, we know that there may be some unique needs of some students, sometimes special circumstances in which our traditional program isn't ideal for everybody. And that's why we follow the state policy for using correspondence course credit for graduation. So let's kind of talk about why we're here. In June of last year, a group of teachers came before this board with concerns about some recent developments in regard to these correspondence courses. The board asked that a committee be formed to study the issue, and that's what we did. All 4 comprehensive high schools sent a teacher or 2, a counselor, administrator, and we started with these very specific questions there on the screen, which I'm going to come back to guide our investigation. So let's talk about what we found. On the next slide, as you can see, we gathered some data. What you're looking at is the percentage of students at each school satisfying a requirement through a correspondence course. We aren't talking about credit recovery, but using online or summer school for advancement. The colors match the high schools, with the bar on the left representing the 2016-17 year, and the bar on the right showing our current school year. And we didn't have any data for Torrance or North from last year, so that's why those are blank. But when I look at that data, I see 2 big observations. Number 1, the trend is pretty small at Torrance and North, but significant at South and West. At those 2 schools, 30 to 50% of all social studies students are in correspondence courses. That's a significant number. And secondly, the trend is growing. When we look at last year to the current year, we see dramatic growth, especially at West and South from last year to the present. So here's the point. Correspondence courses are on the path to becoming the status quo for social studies education at South and West. They are the default provider for these classes. So it's critical that we address the key questions raised by the committee on the previous slide. Let's go back, and we can see that these are questions about why students are taking these classes, how they measure up as meaningful learning experiences. And if we go ahead to the next one, we realize these are important questions, in the next one actually. These are important questions, but we see that the answers to the questions are not all comforting. Let's take a look at, this is data that the students themselves had to say. First, the reasons for taking these correspondence courses. With sophomores and juniors, this is in the second column, many of them wanted to add another A to G course. We're talking about adding another year of a world language, a fine arts elective, maybe a specialty AP class. However, when we get to seniors, the vast majority want a shortened day. In regard to the workload in the third column, the most common response was less than 10 hours per week are spent on these courses. And remember, these are students getting a year's worth of credit in 6 weeks typically. So we're talking about 60 hours of work in comparison with 180 hours of seat time in a regular class, with homework and projects on top of that. And in the final column about rigor, the students themselves say the courses are less challenging. The tasks are commonly matching or multiple choice assessments that students can look up online as they take them. There might be a handful of writing assignments that are simply paragraphs that appear to be graded more based on the number of sentences in them than any thoughtful details in their argument. All of this is consistent with what members of the committee found when we were actually looking inside some of these correspondence courses. And the committee determined that these courses fell short of TUSD standards and expectations. The courses aren't aligned with Common Core standards for literacy or current state social studies frameworks in regard to student inquiry or civic participation. So, to explore the impact on students, I'm going to hand it off to Christine Cruz.
Good evening. So with the trends that are occurring currently at South High and West High School, many students are graduating from TUSD with little or no social studies courses taught in TUSD classes. Over the past 10 years, TUSD has trained its teachers in D3, Common Core, and currently PLCs. Teachers are focused on 21st century skills that are needed to be successful in college courses as well as in the workforce. Unfortunately, these are not a critical component of many of the correspondent courses that our students have been participating in. As a result, the Correspondence Committee concluded that a compromise was needed. The extreme point of view is to ban all correspondence courses. However, we understand as educators, we need to promote choice, and we understand circumstances of what is best for different families. An extreme abolition would not be appropriate. Therefore, we are proposing that we graduate students who are well-equipped in all content areas without a deficit in a single core discipline, a balanced student. The Correspondence Committee recommends we continue the policy that students will be eligible for up to 40 credits outside of TUSD. We recommend a change of limiting the amount of credits to 10 credits per academic discipline towards graduation requirements. Are there any questions?
I didn't see who came first. We'll go with Mr. Stefan.
Ladies first.
No, it's actually you and Don, so it's kind of himself there, but
If this is passed tonight, when would it take effect?
Should the board recommend these changes and approve them, this would go into effect immediately in terms of scheduling for next year. So students from this point forward will not be able to take more than 10 credits per core discipline.
For scheduling next year?
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
I'm really pleased with this. I think I said when you guys were here last time that probably the most important teachers I had were my government teachers and my history teachers and those people, probably because I couldn't add. But they were the ones that probably have stayed with me the longest. I've noticed from my own kids, those were the teachers that seemed to stay with them the longest. I think they quickly forgot about their calculus teachers, even though now that they're in college, they wish they would have remembered them. But certainly it makes a difference, and I think certainly when you look at the political discourse that's going on now and general interaction throughout the political process and the government process and the community process, certainly the better training we can do at this age to get people involved and understand that there's two sides of an argument and understand how we got here and how there still is positive things to look forward to. I think this is huge, and I think nobody has a better effect on kids at 15, 16, 17 years old than a engaged social study teacher, an engaged history teacher, in those disciplines, geography, that can show them the world, because, they're like this, and this isn't the world anymore. And so, I'm really pleased with this. I think it was watched a little bit from afar. It seems to have been pretty collaborative. I'm not hearing anybody from the teacher side. I think this has worked out really well. So I wholeheartedly support this and look forward to getting that implemented next year. Thank you.
Mrs. Reagans.
Yeah, I just had a question. So Ed Code requires that we allow 40 credits from outside of TUSD? Because that's kind of how it's worded here, per Ed Code.
So per the CSBA guidelines that we get for board policy, that's one of the guidelines that they give us, that we are able to give up to 40 credits outside of the home district.
But we could alter that number. We don't have to allow 40 credits. I see nodding heads back there.
You do not. It would be, that would be a part of a non-conforming policy should the board wish to take action.
Right, because we're already going to be non-conforming with the changes that we're making. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Deutsch.
I had a question regarding students, and so will they be working with the counselors in order to transition this?
So counselors recognize that we'll have a lot to do with students in terms of four-year planning, because there are so many options now for our students. There's Project Lead the Way, there are many, fine arts options. Our students are, they have so much available to them in our high schools now that there are a lot of choices to be made, but we recognize that if we plan carefully and thoughtfully for 4 years, and with the allowance of being able to take, 10 credits from various departments, if students really need to have more time to get everything that they want into their schedule. We also recognize that many of our seniors, by the time they get to the 12th grade, are opting to shorten their days. So we know that there is time for students to take advantage of many of these outside, of these extra things that they want to do. And, we counselors feel very strongly that our students have been missing out on the offerings of our own social studies departments, which are doing really important college readiness skills for our students. So yes, we'll be working a lot more closely, because we're going to have to help the kids really plan carefully where they're going to take, if they want to do advancement in the summer, what subjects they can do it in, and how to space that out so that they don't exceed the maximum.
Great, thank you.
Mrs. Reagans.
So from the counselor perspective, you think we'll be able to keep a handle on the kids that are taking the online courses or the correspondence courses, let's call it that instead, and that it won't be problematic for people saying, oh, I didn't know about it and went ahead and did it?
Yeah, so we discussed how we would communicate should this be passed. And I think the 4 high schools are in agreement of putting something public on the website to advertise it. The counselors are getting ready to go out into the classrooms to schedule for this upcoming school year. So this will be a hot topic during our presentations, and counseling them as far as what their other options are should they have already taken a social studies class over the summer. And am I missing any other set of communication?
The one other big piece of communication is really having our counselors speak to our students about the why. Why are they choosing to take this course over the summer for advancement? So is it for them to take another course? Is it for them to take another A through G course or a Project Lead the Way program? Or is it just to shorten their day their senior year? And so we really want to get behind the why and make sure that our counselors are communicating with our students the importance of taking the courses on our campuses and also taking advantage of the different programs we have on our campuses. So balancing both of those.
Can I ask one more question to finish?
Sure, Mrs. Reagan.
So the other thing that I believe had been mentioned somewhere along the way was getting pre-approval prior to taking the courses, so that there is some guidance in the process?
Yeah, so we have discussed creating a form, a concurrent enrollment form that all 4 high schools would use. And while there are some online agencies and programs that don't require a counselor signature, we would advertise that this form does need to be signed by the school counselor in order for them to enroll in the course or have it count towards the 40 credits. So we are going to be creating a form as soon as we know the verdict.
Mrs. Deutsch.
I just had a question regarding how you have a strategy for communicating it out to parents. How's that going to work out?
I do believe that we more than likely will we use Naviance, which is one of our tools that we do communicate with families as well as Power School. So when we do e-blast, during scheduling time, we probably will have to make this very public and clear and transparent with the families that this is the new rule moving forward. I think another big piece of it is to the counseling department's concern on the mental health piece, because I do think that some students are taking, history over the summer as an example to sometimes overschedule them, and it doesn't always work out in regards to their day-to-day lives. And I think we're very concerned about that piece as well. But I think for both the students, the parents, and the teachers, our hope is to be very transparent about this new policy.
Thank you.
Okay, I have two. Right now, there's someone who's 8 months pregnant, and they've planned out their entire school year from now till college, and they had intended on taking 4 years of social studies at West or North or Torrance or South, and that was their plan. They were going to send their kid off to 4 years, take 40 credits all in social studies. Are we prepared for that parent who's got this all laid out, even though the kid hasn't been born yet? Because that's the one that I believe will show up in our boardroom upset and cranky about it.
Look, it's 16 years from now?
I've met those parents.
They exist.
No, they'll be here before that. My second question alludes to that. Anyhow, you have the ability as counselors to counsel around that? I mean, how you plan on dealing with that?
So I think both Tiffany and Chris alluded to this, was working with students on their 4-year plan of what classes they're going to take, starting in their freshman year and then going on from each year. So giving them those opportunities and options for what else they can do besides just 40 credits in social studies.
And actually, before students started taking before the opportunity for online classes came about a few years ago, this issue did not exist to this extent. I think the fact that so many online programs became available and students became aware that there was, an easier way perhaps to meet the requirement, and that's when, it kind of blew up. I think most students can fit, the courses that they want within the 4-year plan that we can develop with them, especially within this policy, because it's a very balanced policy. It still allows students to take classes through other departments and doesn't restrict them from making room for something extra that they want to do. So I think that, it's a reasonable, that we can reasonably work with any family to help them get, all of the needs that, that they foresee for their student.
You're my child's counselor. I'm very, very, very fond of you. You do a great job, but I really think you guys are stepping into a breach
Okay, you can hold me to it.
Yeah, I'm really worried about the parent that had planned the next 3 years their kid being in social studies, because that would let them take band or whatever. Mr. King is very, very motivating to getting people to take band. So that's my apprehension. Mr. Steffen has a question.
There is no way for TUSD to require a verification as a kid applies to an online.
Yeah.
That the receiving institution would say, red flag, sorry kid, you've already taken your 10.
That would be our job as a district. Yes, we would have to follow up with that. It wouldn't be the receiving institution's protocol.
Okay, and so I guess following up on Mike, not quite 16 years from now, but so if a kid slips through and does take 40, doesn't tell anybody, just goes and does it or whatever, I don't know if this is how it's going to work, but we would be prepared to say, sorry, those 30 don't count or whatever it was.
There's a couple options, and so, like I said, per board policy, they are to get approval prior to taking a course. Should there be someone that slips through the cracks 4 times in a row and takes those courses, we would have to look at outside options. So one of those things is that student would then have to provide an outside transcript so that those courses may or may not be put on our transcript. But these are kind of what ifs that we would develop or that we've been going through.
They're ahead of the game.
Our student rep also has a question or a comment.
Certainly.
Well, she's not going to be happy.
No, she's from North, she doesn't care. Not to say that, but I was amazed
No, they
at the
like the
differential
classroom. They
in the
like the
number of
classroom.
kids in the different high schools. There was a huge differential from area of town to area of town. North, very few North kids do this, correct?
Yeah. So, my question was, would people be able to take the, like, social science classes online, or like over the summer still, or would they only be restricted to the 40 credits at school?
So they would still be able to take credits outside. It would just be the 10 per subject area.
Mrs. Reagan, do you have a question?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say that we actually have set a precedent for getting approval for courses before you sign up with SoCal Rock. That was a procedure that we put into place, and it, as far as I understand, it's working.
Oh, there you go.
Similar approach, and we would
Yes.
use it with this as well.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, I just have one, uniquely enough, I got an email from someone who actually read our agenda. This has never happened in the 8 years I've done this. And sent a very polite email, remarkably well-written, and didn't insult my family heritage at all, so that's kind of fascinating. But she pointed out that Manhattan Beach, Palos Verdes, and Redondo has started this. So we're not doing anything unique, correct? This is
Online thing.
yeah, limiting people to a particular discipline. Is that accurate? I'm getting nods over there.
Each of the districts have taken a different approach. Some have not allowed certain programs. Some have limited it to only certain programs. Some have, yeah, so there's kind of a hodgepodge of different ways that each of our neighboring districts is utilizing
And
this.
we have to a certain extent, accept accreditation from a WASC-accredited school.
Yes.
We can't say, okay, we're not going to take SBA students because we don't like Susan.
General rule of thumb is if they are WASC accredited, that is what we use to kind of audit and say, this has been anointed as a program.
Okay, now I'm going to read from her email. Written, as it's written, it hurts high achievers in TUSD high schools because she says that the students should be filling their classes with other things or more rounded. We can accommodate that, right? If someone wants to take, instead of taking social studies, they can take fine arts. That's the part of the plan to this.
So part of the plan would be allowing them, going back to the why, is so why are they taking this course, and then giving them the options of different ways to fulfill this. We also, one of the questions we looked at in the beginning was innovative scheduling ideas, and so helping schools, do we offer additional 0-period courses? Do we offer them 7th period so that students can still take them during the school year, but we would have to use innovative scheduling? So should there be impossible for the student to take courses in the summer, yet they still want to take this full load and do these high-achieving things, and we would look at innovative scheduling ideas to ensure that they can have that.
So that's where we're
program.
going to lean on our principals. I see one there in the back. We're going to lean on our principals to get creative in that process.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
One more thing.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Reagan, yes.
That's okay. And the whole point is not that you're taking away the possibility of the online or correspondence courses, but that you don't want them all to be in a certain discipline or a certain area of study, which I absolutely agree with, so that there is, and we keep saying, a more balanced approach.
Yeah, so what's happening is, again, we're graduating TUSD students without taking sophomore, junior, or senior year at all at our schools, which is kind of embarrassing, especially from a city that hosts the, Armed Forces Day Parade.
Yeah, it's amazing to me, too.
We need to have these kids at least for 2 of the 3 years in, as well as, think about all of the professional development this district has provided for its teachers, going back to the D3 training that started this really off and the Common Core and now the PLCs with all of these essential skills. We're just saying that, yes, you can take other courses. We want a balanced student that does not limit one full discipline.
Yep. Yes, Kayla?
So going off of what she just said, how the they would need 20 credits, I think, out of the 30 at their school at least. What if a junior already took world history and U.S. history and is becoming a senior this following year? Would they have to take the U.S. history or world history over again because it wasn't at their school?
No, we wouldn't take away anything that a student
Yeah.
has already completed. So if a student did world history and U.S. history, they would still be granted those 20 credits towards history. They just would need to pick a different discipline other than social studies this coming summer, should they want to make room for other courses.
Very good question. It's basically what you're saying, is we're changing the policy and we're trying to accommodate everything we can and giving a certain quantity of lateral movement to our counselors to get to that end. It'll also be to the counselors and the principals, obviously, to get to that end. So, all right. I need a motion.
No, it comes later.
It's in that, it's under discussion, actually.
Oh, I can't even vote. Sorry, guys. We do like it. I think we're pretty unanimous. We like it, but we can't even vote on it, so.
Thanks for your work.
We'll make them hang around longer just to make doubly sure.
All right, we're moving on to oral communications. If you wish to speak, you need to fill out a little yellow card. And I am going to read what we do with oral communications. The Board of Education welcomes input from the public in order to discuss business in an orderly manner for the privacy and safety of the speakers and to help staff respond more directly. The board policies require that public presentations to the board comply with certain procedures, including speakers to non-agenda items may address only items that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board. Time allotted for presentations is limited to 3 minutes, and we'll stick with the 3 minutes because we only have 9 cards. Total time is allotted for input will be non-agenda items is limited to 30 minutes. A speaker may not relinquish his or her time to another. When addressing the board, speakers are requested to state their name, address, address the president from the podium, and adhere to the applicable time limits. Complaints against employees or students will normally be heard in closed session, and the district's complaint procedure should be followed before discussion with the board. The board may remove disruptive individuals and order the room cleared if necessary. Any person who willfully disturbs any public meeting is guilty of a misdemeanor. I'm going to call names and put somebody on deck. So I'm going to lead off with the hardest name I could pronounce. I can't. Pello? Pravilla? Ah, very good. And then on deck is Teresa Belmontes. And again, everyone has 3 minutes.
I would think that you'd be able to pronounce my name by now.
I'm kind of new at this, so
Okay.
bear with me.
I understand you guys have a difficult position. I understand that you guys have to make difficult decisions, and a lot of the decisions that you guys might make might be very unpopular. Unfortunately, once again, going back to the Hamilton school site, I've been to the 7-Eleven meetings. Dr. Stowe's probably tired of seeing me by now. And we've talked about a lot of different aspects of it. But the main thing is I keep hearing words like, we're predicting this, we're predicting that, our enrollment's going down. And on the last 7-Eleven meeting, I said, I don't see how you can predict that. There's not all the factors being taken into consideration. Yeah, maybe some numbers might be going down. But the other thing is we have older residents in Torrance. So you're going to have that overlap. And as those residents now in their 70s and 80s are selling their properties, we are getting a lot of younger families coming in. So those numbers, what I was explaining to the 7-Eleven meeting, if we sell that school district, we're left with no option. So if those numbers do go up, once you sell it, it's gone. I understand that you guys have budget problems. I understand that there's a $35 million price tag on that property. It can certainly help out temporarily. That money will go, and if we lose that site, we can never get that back. So that's one thing that I want you guys to consider. Once again, once it's sold, we can't get it back. So if those numbers do change, then what do? We keep compacting children into classrooms, making the classrooms larger. Baseball, we've talked about that. Condensing it into the schools, I don't see how that's possible. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration. I know it looks good on paper, and maybe that school site isn't as active as you guys think it is, but I've been saying for the last 3 months, I'm there every day. It is. It's being used all the time. We can't even park in the parking lot. That says something. They're utilizing it. The baseball fields, we tell you, we're using them all year. I suggest, if you guys really want to Get out and see what type of facility that is. Go to opening day this Saturday. We have opening day, 10 o'clock, this Saturday at Torrance Little Lake. There's going to be tons of kids there. If you guys do decide to sell that, those are the kids that are going to be without a baseball field. Think about that. So, like I said, I encourage you guys to come. The other thing is that if you really want to know how important this is to this community, we don't have much in North Torrance. This last weekend, we had hundreds of people coming to that site just to get ready for opening day. That says something. That says that that community loves that facility and it's important to us. And that's what you guys are essentially looking at taking away from us. Thank you.
Teresa Belmonte. On deck is Mary Beth Borowski.
Hi, Teresa Belmontes. Thank you for having me out tonight. Again, I'm here to echo the Hamilton site. Please reconsider. I think my decision's gone back and forth a couple of times as far as my compassion for the board and the decisions that they have to make sitting here and in the public's eye and scrutiny, and I can't even imagine. However, I did want to just share with you guys this season, last weekend, we had our opening day. We have probably 40% new families come to our league this season, which is actually completely unheard of since I've been there. So with that said, the promotion of, letting the community know about the sale has actually piqued the interest. People know where to go again. People know who to reach out to again. And for that, it is a thriving organization, or it is a thriving site. Hamilton itself, before the website of Torrance Adult School got redone, because it just happened to not be able to find it anymore, it said Hamilton was the busiest of the three adult schools we had. I tried to go on the California Department of Education because I keep hearing the echoing of the freeway, the freeway, the freeway. Well, UConn's also close to the freeway. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of, running around this actual problem when the problem here, I get it. You guys, like you said, need to find money somewhere. But look at all the reports that have been even showed today. North Torrance is really suffering. I mean, we don't even have, the resources that West and South do. I really, really hope that you guys reconsider the locations that you guys are picking from, because we are dwindling. We literally have nothing left. We are bare bones. So please just consider that. I don't know. I pretty much feel the same way everybody else in North Torrance does, where this is pretty much a done deal anyways. However, if there is, hope at all, I'd like you guys to maybe reconsider. There's definitely the interest there. There's definitely the community backing it. We just need the school board to back the community. So, thank you.
On deck, S.O. Baruman? I'm torturing these names.
Good evening. I'm Mary Beth Borowski. I'm a teacher at Magruder, and I came tonight because I want to implore you to settle the contract with the teachers. There were two issues that caused the no vote. Big issues were money and calendar, but I just want to talk about money. There was a 1% raise on the table, and this one's hard when teachers see how the district has been spending money on programs, the Flex, Solution Tree, new phones, RTI, and PBIS coordinators that we don't see directly in our classrooms every day. Do you know about the new push for RTI? Do you know that most secondary schools now have a tutorial period at some point of the day? That means a different set of students in addition to the 5 classes we already teach. This is a time designated to give students extra instruction to help them master a skill they didn't get the first time around. In theory, this is a great idea because kids learn concepts in different ways and at different times. But what this means is it's also a lot more work. Teachers have to figure out who is struggling on a weekly basis, call them in on a certain day of the week. Since it's not supposed to be new instruction, we're asked to teach what we already taught, but in a different way. We're told over and over that this should be easy because it's not new instruction. But instruction, good instruction, is instruction, and it does take a lot of preparation. Teachers want to do the best for their students, so they go above and beyond to make sure that the students get the best possible instruction. Please know that this is a lot of extra work that we do on a daily basis because the district has asked for it. It has now become part of our job description. When test scores go up and the district gets accolades, it's because of the hard work of the teachers who keep getting more piled onto their plates. 1%, that's nothing in relationship to what the teachers give to help students, which in turn helps the district. Thank you.
On deck is Mark P.
Good evening, I'm Esau Baruman. Kind of looking at the 7-Eleven committee and Hamilton. I'm trying to do research and trying to understand. I've looked at the DataQuest website, trying to look at low socioeconomic. North Torrance has a higher percentage. I believe it's at 40% compared to like 20% district-wide. We've been putting in public records requests, as you can see on the first page of the handout that I gave you. We were asking for information on parent education level, which is information I know the district has, because on the enrollment form, if you look on the second page, there's a copy of it, you'll see that it's at the bottom, one of the questions that we ask every parent. I also know that it's information that the district has electronically, because they have to send it to the state of California, CDE. It's on the CalPADS manual. You'll see user manual. That's, the front page there. On the back of that front page, page 3, number 12, field 12, parent guardian, highest education level. And I believe it's also connected to Ed Code. So I know the district has this information. I looked up California Public Records Act request. LA County kind of gives a little blurb. If you're requesting something from them, it goes on to say, including information available in an electronic format. I looked up some of the Ed Code, and I kind of underlined some of the things on there, and it goes on to say electronic format too, which I know the district has. When we presented this information at the 7-Eleven committee, Dr. Stowe mentioned that they didn't have a paper, but I know that we've had public records requests that I know the district doesn't have in a form to just pass out. They had to compile some data or look at something. California, Transparent California, where it asks everyone's salary, overtime, and all of that. I know that there isn't a form just laying around. They say, oh, here it is. Let me take care of that public records request. As you can see, there's copies of that in here, because I know that it was compiled electronically or something like that. So I really asked the board to help me out with this, get this public records request done. If it isn't possible, then I'll probably have to put in a public records request with the California Department of Education, asking for parent education level for the city of Torrance, so that I can start looking at what part of Torrance has a higher need based on parent education level, because we are impacting the adult education in North Torrance if you were to close down Hamilton. So I'm trying to get some information and see what's going on, who has the highest need. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was Leslie Prieto. You're Leslie Prieto?
No, she works with us, part of the North Torrance.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Mr. P, followed by Margaret Talamantes.
Yeah, President Wilmers, I filled out a pink card, so it's like an itemized. Am I supposed to speak afterwards or right now?
You are here speaking to the West High social science teacher?
For the itemized.
For the item.
I'm sorry?
Itemized 10.3.
Oh, so that's coming up.
So
that's coming up. I'm sorry. I did not read that. Sorry, Mr. P. Margaret Talamantes, followed by Shelby LaRue and Unzar Pasta.
Hi, good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about the equity in North Torrance Unified and why the residents of North Torrance are feeling as if their circumstances are unfair. Hamilton will soon be leased or surplus by your decision, and I'm here tonight to let you know that it is not equitable that an entire community was selected to lose resources. The whole middle school remodel over 10 years ago should not have determined the fate of North Torrance. It is unfair to determine an entire community's future due to a random remodel of a middle school. In February of 2017, a property value appraisal report was initiated by the district for Hamilton in the tune of $33.5 million. And my question here tonight is, why not Levy? If the district was truly assessing all available properties within the district, available properties, why not do it for both Hamilton and Levy? Why can't the district still request an assessment for Levy? This parcel of land is larger and would be more valuable, thus more money to the school district. The area surrounding Levy, New Horizons community, is already zoned for multifamily units. If TUSD leases Hamilton, North Torrance as a community will have lost 42% of the district's leased or sold properties over the past 45 years. In school year 16-17, North Torrance was only 22% of the student population. However, we have been losing education resources at higher proportions than the rest of Torrance. TUSD schedules more classes at Levy. In fall 2017, Hamilton had 42 classes and Levy had 77 classes. Hamilton has close to half of the classes Levy has, and there's no coincidence that the numbers at Hamilton are declining because the district is purposely trying to move everything over to Levy. Levy also offers higher skilled training opportunities such as medical assistant, pharmacy technician, medical billing, bookkeeping, accounting, public notary certification, and Microsoft certification. Hamilton does not offer any of these classes. Educational resources should be better aligned with the community's need for education, given that the educational attainment of residents in the north is lower than those in the south. Levy also hosts the majority of fitness, yoga, aerobics, and art classes. This disproportionately impacts North residents who enroll in these classes daily and have to travel farther for classes. It also impacts senior citizens that have limited transportation methods and is an unfair distance for them to travel in comparison to their neighbors in South Torrance. For all the reasons above, this is why North Torrance residents are starting to feel that things are not fair. North Torrance residents are talking, noticing, and organizing. If the district continues down the Hamilton surplus path, we are prepared to stop the rezoning of Hamilton with the city. We will be mobilizing residents for upcoming November elections, and we will be watching our elected officials to make sure that you are making fair decisions for the entire community. Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? Excuse me? Can I ask you a question? Yes. You talked a lot about the adult school. I assume you've talked with the adult school folks about this and about the aspects that you've discussed here this evening? What do you mean? The people that are the administrators in charge of adult school, you've talked with them?
The stats that I got were from the 2017.
But have you talked with the adult school administration about their feelings about the Hamilton school site?
No, because they were told not to talk to us. They were specifically told when we go up not to make any comment when we go up.
So the administrator in charge of Torrance Adult School will not talk to you?
We've gone up to the administrator at Hamilton, and they were advised not to speak to us.
I find that very difficult to believe.
Talk to your staff.
But the administrator for Torrance Adult School may not be at Hamilton.
I'm not sure
do this.
who is over the entire,
Okay.
but when we went to Hamilton.
Maybe we can let you know who that is, and I think maybe you need to talk with that person.
Okay.
Thanks.
The numbers are all there.
Moving along, Shelby LaRue and Uzar Pasta, thank you.
Yes.
Followed by Sarah Duenes.
Hello, my name is Uzair Pasta and this is Shelby LaRue, and we are both students at West Torrance High School. Recently, West has undergone renovations, and due to this, it was decided by TUSD to remove blinds in Building 3 and 4. And in the past few months, the removal of blinds seemed to be more of an issue. Blinds offer a variety of necessary advantages, one of them being during the summer, temperatures rise, and when the windows have no means of blocking the sunlight, the interior of the room begins to rise in temperature. In a heat wave the week of October, temperatures were in high 90s and reaching over 100 degrees. Yet many students and teachers alike reported the internal temperatures of Building 3 being higher than the external temperatures. A large portion of our learning experience comes from looking at projector screens. Because of the inability to get rooms remotely dark, very few people can actually see and read the screens. Because majority of classes in Building 3 are history classes, the information must be presented to us in projectors. These presentations cannot be replaced with oral lessons and handouts. Studies show that majority of people are visual learners and retain information better when they see it in addition to hearing it. Projectors are vital to our learning, but unfortunately are rendered useless because of our lack of blinds. Not only does the lack of blinds affect education, but in recent news, there was a school shooting in Parkland, Florida, where 17 individuals were killed. This made it all too clear just how possible a shooting like that could happen here. Blinds can also help provide a sense of security and safety for students as well as teachers, and also create another way to block out threats from entering.
But we feel that this problem extends beyond blinds. The factor of the matter is that this decision to eliminate blinds was done so with little to no input from students. In fact, the education system was invented for the education of students. You see, there are approximately 2,200 students, along with 80 teachers and less than 10 administrators at our high school alone. This makes the student body the largest body in the education system. So shouldn't it follow that the largest, most central body contained within the education system should have a say in the school themselves? We see this as a disconnect between the board and the students. This disconnect resulted in the decision to remove the blinds from West High School, a decision we feel is a bad one. But we, the students of West High, present you with a petition to replace the blinds. 1,064 students and 4 teachers have signed this petition to reinstall the blinds at West High School. So we are asking you to help us fix this issue and work with us so that we can have something, so that something like this does not happen in the future. We understand that you are all very busy and that funds in general are scarce. However, this issue matters to us greatly, and we think it is worthy of both time and money. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good.
Good evening. Sarah Duenas with the North Torrance Neighborhood Alliance, and I'm here to talk to you about poor choices. When I was a teenager, I thought I knew everything, and I made, like most young people do, poor choices. And I was lucky. I grew up in a 2-parent home, and my parents paid attention and reeled me in when necessary. And for extra bonus points, I grew up in a loving home. I also had dozens of family members and mentors on the sidelines to help me if I ever strayed on the wrong path. Most children do not have that. If a child makes bad choices, if they do get on the wrong path, where do they go? It takes a village to raise children. You are part of that village. We are part of that village. In North Torrance, we have a high percentage of single-parent families. We have parents working so hard to keep their kids fed and housed. A woman on the 7-Eleven committee meeting spoke about her time as a single mother. She lived near Hamilton so her kid could walk to the ballpark, and she depended on her softball family to get her child to practice and to games while she worked. And maybe her daughter wouldn't have gotten that softball scholarship had she not had her village. And let's look at the kid that has no village, the one that keeps making poor choices, who eventually is going to need to make up credits or complete their GED, or the one that isn't college-bound but needs a skill to survive in the working world. Where will they go if Hamilton's not there? When you are poor and barely living to make ends meet, a 5-mile bus ride down to Levy might as well be a 50-mile bus ride. You have squandered an opportunity with Hamilton. That school could be a gem in the South Bay for the community. We could provide career technical educational programs. Stop sending everything to Levy. Hamilton is off the 405 freeway. It's more accessible to every part of the community, not only for Torrance residents, but our neighboring communities. Don't sell out our village to make up for deficits that this board has created. You need to stop calling Hamilton surplus and start calling it what it truly is, a step back on to the right path.
Diane Diekman.
My name is Diane Diekman. I'm a homeowner and a resident of North Torrance, and I'm just here because I'm very concerned for our community, as all of these people have been saying tonight, and I don't really have anything new to add, other than the fact that I've been attending the 7-Eleven committees, and the 7-Eleven committee even said that we as a community need to start coming to you guys because you need to hear it from us, because they're only going to make a recommendation, whether it's a surplus or not. Our community obviously doesn't feel like it's a surplus. It's such a vital part, like Ms. Duena said, to the community, to that area, to so many people that could make it a vital area. And I really believe that the job needs to be done to look at more sites than just Hamilton. I think that Levy needs to be looked at and addressed as a possibility as well. If you need to convene another 7-Eleven committee to look at Levy as well and look at two options versus just looking at Hamilton and sending us away. Thank you.
Moving on to item number 10, discussion act on items. Let me read instructions to the public. Speakers wishing to address the board on agenda topics are permitted 3 minutes per topic. Total time granted for public input shall be limited to 30 minutes per topic. The board policies require the public presentation to the board comply with certain procedures, including items 2 through 4 listed in oral communications. We have first board 10.2, approval of board policies and board bylaws update.
I'll make a motion to approve and to waive the second reading.
All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
10.3, approval of amendments to AR 6146.11, alternative credits towards graduation.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have to waive,
We have a card.
did we waive the second?
Yeah, we did, in the first motion.
He made it in that motion.
Yes.
The first, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. P. to talk to 10.3.
President Board, my name is Mr. P. from West High. I was here over 6 months ago with my 5-minute and 37-second speech. Mark Steffens was the guy who motioned the board to allow me to finish. And I was with West High social science teachers who were shocked at the time about the policy which was in place. I'm going to skip much of what I've written here because I think Don Lee echoed some of this sort of stuff already. But I want to say thank you, first of all, for doing. I didn't get a chance to say thank you for giving me that chance in June to speak, finish my speech. I am pleased to see that this did not die in committee, like you mentioned in June, that it actually went forward, and I'm pleased to see that teachers' voices were respected in this matter. I'm pleased to see that teachers, admin, counselors all work together on this matter. Now, am I pleased with the recommendation on this committee? No. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm very happy that people are talking. I think we need to talk on more issues that are facing the district. And this is something that's super duper important, and I'm happy that this was resolved in some sort of consensus. Again, is it what I would want? No, but I'm just Mr. P. But I think it's important that I express this, and I think it goes to what Don Lee was mentioning earlier. Do we want to have more face time with students? This is a big issue for the future. Or do we want to have more screen time? And I think kids get enough screen time. I think a lot of the social detachment that students are experiencing, a lot of things, besides just testing and all this sort of stuff, come out of just having that cell phone in their hand all the time. Now, I'm not against it. It's good to have them. But at the same time, there needs to be a sense of balance. And I think it's not so much we were asking earlier, the counselors and teachers, are you prepared for this with parents and kids that aren't even born yet? I think as custodians of the district, that's your guys' role. You have a lot of power. You have to decide and take a stand and say, hey, well, we value kids being in these classes over online experiences. Now, am I a Luddite? Do I think that they should always be banned? Absolutely not. There are circumstances where kids should be allowed to, based on this case-by-case basis. But I think that should be much more of a rare sort of thing than just letting the floodgates open. That is currently the case. So I hope you guys adopt, and I hope we continue to remember this, too, in the future, that we just don't say, okay, it's over now. It's something you have to monitor. And I remember, Harry Reagans, you were like that 6 months ago, and I mentioned the power of Socrates and Plato as teachers, your inspiration with your teacher at Torrance High, Mr. Clark for me at San Pedro High. I like to think my inspiration I give to other students. We need to keep that going. That's been going on for thousands of years. This internet thing is a new thing. We don't know where it's really taking us. We might think we know, but we really don't know. And in that, I want to mention 2 books for your summer reading, both by Neil Postman, I highly recommend, who's no longer with us. One is called Technopoly, and the other one is called The End of Education. I would be more than willing to buy copies for you guys. You could ask Tim Stowe for his copy of End of Education. I got it for him about 10 years ago when he was principal at West High. I don't know where it is, but he might be willing to share. But I think it's really good reading to think about. It's a huge issue, this online sort of stuff, and where we're going in the future. I thank you.
Thank you. We have a question from Mrs. Reagans.
Well, actually, it's a comment on the actual content of the AR. Is that appropriate now?
Yes.
Okay. In the foreign language instruction section, the other sections, especially the college course one, not so much the junior college, but on the next page for the correspondence instruction, it mentions that the institution must be accredited in order to receive credit. It doesn't say that under the foreign language section. It says, shall accept credit for foreign language courses completed in a private school. It doesn't say an accredited school or an accredited course.
I'll modify my motion to include that.
Is that, do you think that's relevant in that situation?
I think we can check on this and get back to you, and I know, because we don't have a counselor, I think, that still in the audience, right?
Anybody stay? No.
I think that perhaps, and anyone can weigh in from, that have been around for way too long, that sometimes some of the foreign languages are not our typical languages that we do offer that are at other institutions that might not have that same WASC accreditation. That there have been some cases where kids have gone and been able to exceed levels that we don't offer. So I'd want to just double check and look into that on occasion there have been outside programs that have offered languages for our kids.
Okay, yeah, if we could check on that.
But I can double check on that currency
Yeah.
of how often that's used or if it's still being used.
Because we just kind of said that would be our litmus test for the courses, so if that doesn't apply, I can understand that, I guess, but I would like specific confirmation of that. Thanks.
Mr. Stefan.
That doesn't hinder us from approving this or not approving it tonight,
No.
and then we'll just amend it if we need to,
I
right?
suggest your comment is the way to go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not
Very good.
substantive, it's
Okay.
just a...
Very good. Just wanna make sure.
That being said, all those in favor of approving the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the 10.4, California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly Election Ballot.
Are there more people than spots?
Yes, there are more people than spots.
Mrs. Reagans, do you have any favorites? We usually lean on you.
Well, I mean, I tend to lean on the incumbents, but that's just because they're the folks that I've had experience with, so.
Well, there's one from Hermosa Beach City, San Diego, never mind, sorry.
I mean, we can just punt.
We could.
If we don't know them, I mean,
I remember some of these people from 10 years ago, I mean.
Yeah, and they're
that
still
may be
around on
exactly
it.
the problem.
Exactly,
But-
that's kind of why I was looking for a new face.
I'll make a motion that we vote for no one since we are not prepared to vote for anyone.
I got no problem with that. Do I have a second?
Are there more incumbents than votes required?
One, two.
We don't, I mean, we might as well just throw darts if we don't know these people. I
Well,
mean,
these are
that
people who have
better
been
not-
serving the function, though, and have been at least ostensibly effective at it.
Okay. I think we have a motion and a second.
Yeah, well, we have a motion and a second not to vote on this because we're not prepared. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Opposed.
Good.
Okay, moving on to Adopt Resolution AS-09-17/18, Governing Board of Torrance Unified School District Resolution in support of accelerating the distribution of Proposition 51 school facility funds.
Enthusiastically move to
yes.
approve.
Yes, this is a resolution requesting that the governor go ahead and sell Prop 51 bonds.
Amen.
As you know, only 4% of those bonds have actually been put up for sale. Yet, there are millions of dollars that school districts in the state are owed, including us, for construction that we've already completed. So this is a movement across the state to get the governor to move to sell bonds that the voters have already approved.
Do I have a motion
You have lots of them.
and a second?
Second.
All those in favor of supporting
Aye.
this?
Aye.
We have now fallen to number 11, the consent agenda.
Well,
Does anybody want to pull something from the consent agenda?
I just have one comment, but I don't want to pull anything.
Okay. Martha, do you want to pull anything?
No, thank you.
Mrs. Reagans? Mr. Steffen? Your comment, Mr. Lee?
The comment will come with a motion to approve administrative consent items 12 through 18, but the only thing I've got in there is that we're switching the high schools because of the fields and stuff for graduations. We have communicated that well, completely, got everybody on the same page. There's going to be nobody here in May going, you didn't tell us, and my kid has to graduate on the same terra firma I did.
It has been communicated by all principals. We've also had meetings at El Camino, so we've been communicating. I can't guarantee that you may not have parents that are upset, but it's been communicated.
Do we have parents? Do we know of parents that are upset at this point?
Right now, no.
Good, okay, great.
I could become one. No. I have a motion and a second to approve consent. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that actually there were a number of parents that came to me and said, hey, we didn't know this, but in fact, we have actually sort of documented our communications along the lines, and each of the schools has actually documented the number of times that they have communicated the information. But there will always be folks who
No,
say
I understand. I fully
they don't
understand
know.
that
And folks, please, El Camino College is where high school graduations will be this year.
Can we put it on the marquee just at the bottom, June or whatever it is?
June
El
20th.
Camino,
Plan for Elko.
starting now.
Once this MOU is approved by the board, then we can begin more of the planning and
delaying this,
logistics.
so we better go
It
faster.
can happen. We've communicated to parents, but we also need to make sure that we have an MOU in place before we go full-fledged.
Okay, and that note, all those in favor of approving the consent calendar in its completion?
Aye.
Okay, 19.1 is board calendar. 19.2 is revision to administrative regulations and exhibits, December 2017 revisions. We don't have to vote on that.
No.
Okay, comments from member of the Board of Education. Let's start with Mrs. Reagans.
Aren't we supposed to start with?
We haven't met, so mine's going to be very brief.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, that'll be quick. I do have actually a few things. First, I probably should have spoken up when you mentioned calendar. I wanted to invite the board members to the Martin Luther King Visions of Unity Arts Contest celebration on Monday, March 12th. If you haven't attended before, it's always a very poignant night with the students talking about the diversity in our high schools, which is tremendous, and the challenges and pleasures and wonderful things that are brought to us because of that. So really great event if you can join us. They would love to see all of you. I do have some anniversary increments for folks for 10 years of accredited service for classified employees. I have Trelelda Chase and Judith Darnold and Amara Maldonado and Nancy Wiesner. For 15 years of service, Na Pham. And for 20 years of service, Darcy Elias, Alfonso Herrera, Sarah Ontiveros, and Mary Lou Vasquez. So thank you, folks, for working with us for all of those years, and being so helpful to our students and our staff and our schools, keeping them running. Thanks. And last but not least, we did pass a couple of resolutions I wanted to point out to folks. I think I forgot the resolutions last month, and one was counselors' recognition. So if you haven't recognized your counselors for being wonderful people, please do. This is for March 2018 as Arts Education Month, and we are going to proclaim March 2018 National Women's History Month. So both very important causes to keep in mind as we go on. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Steffen. Mrs. Deutsch.
Nothing to report, thank you.
Mr. Lee.
Nothing.
I have not had a SoCal Rock Board meeting, but I did get an email from Dr. Hilaire. The Inglewood School District has appointed Dr. Carlos McGee to be the representative for Inglewood, which has been years coming, so that's a good sign. Other than that, I too have nothing.
I forgot.
Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I wandered out to the pool today. I just was coming back to the place and kind of barged my way on there, got yelled at by the guy for not having a hard hat on, and I said, well, I'm a school board member, and that didn't seem to matter, and still got yelled at, so that's good. But he dutifully walked me around and showed me everything. It's pretty impressive. It's going to be really impressive that it looks like not a construction site in 2.5 weeks, but that's okay. I'm sure Dr. Mannon will get that going. But the pool's full of water. The warm-up pool is 75 degrees per him, so it'll be okay for Mrs. Reagan and I to jump into. And so I think we're moving well there. In fact, he had a picture that he probably should send to us. They had to, I guess, burn the lights in, so they had the lights on all night. So they had all the lights off, and then just the lights in the pool on. That was gorgeous. So anyway, it just, every time I go by there, it's just like, wow, having grown up in town and having one pool. So, so it's looking pretty cool, and looking forward to March 3rd at 1 p.m. for the to show it to the community. Thank you.
There will be cake. Adjournment, motion and a second.
Make a motion to adjourn in,
You can do it if you'd like.
provided that I'm not 61 years old and can't read small things.
Martha's got it on paper if you want to read it.
That's good, because I can, motion to adjourn in memoriam of retired school administrator Cyril Levine, retired instructional aide Martha Lensing, retired teacher Bill Nevin, retired elementary school teacher Denny Hennigan, and retired teacher Barbara Hawkins.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned.